Hey guys, it's Hugh Hefner here with Rock and Rogue. I know all you YouTubers are just anxious to have another video of me reviewing or talking about one of my favorite artists. As you notice, I'm not wearing my robe today, doing things a little different. It is spring, so as you know, my studio was out in the garage, KISS headquarters over here, KISS Army headquarters. And speaking of which, got all the albums you can see behind me, albums and pictures of albums, whatever you want to say, up my little collage. And today is actually my birthday, so my girlfriend, she bought me this from a little place called TD's Tough Decisions here in Owensboro. Pretty cool, dig it. But as you know, the last video down below this one was about the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I just kind of roughed that one up. I didn't do a very good job of talking about the Chili Peppers, and I kind of rambled for 30 minutes. So we're going to try to make this one clean and precise, okay? I like to kind of tie my artists together, not like with rope, but as in like people who've played together in other bands, because some people in bands, they do super group things and they all kind of take turns playing different instruments and whatnot. One of those bands would be the band that I'm talking about today, them Crooked Vultures. Of course, they've only put out one album, 2009's self-titled. It's a really good album. I'm very biased in particular about that album. I love it. It is probably one of the most phenomenal supergroups in my mind, just because of who's in it. Now, predominantly, it's the three members. Of course, Josh Homme or however you say it, from Queens of the Stone Age, and Eagles of Death Metal, also being another kind of supergroup. They have a lot of people coming in and out of that. And then Dave Grohl on drums. Of course, you know, he played with Queens of the Stone Age on this album, Lullaby to Paralyze, one of my favorite albums. And you know, kind of knocked them out into fruition. I mean, people knew about them. Like the first album that came out, it's probably one of my favorites of theirs. And then Rated R, as you see on the wall. Those are the old school albums. But he kind of like kicked it out of the park, or whatever you want to say, knocked it out of the park, out of the field for them, because of his fame and status as a drummer and a frontman in Foo Fighters. This is actually the original copy, by the way, that I bought back in the day, of Color and the Shape. One of my favorite Foo Fighters albums, if not the favorite of mine, just because, I mean, that first one was good, but the second one, they really perfected what they were doing. And they had kind of the key members. I know Pat left, but Pat was in the band at that point. He came back. He's the flavor, you know, Pat Smear of the Germs. And then, of course, Dave Grohl played drums in Nirvana, nonetheless. You know, that's kind of the fame for his drumming. But the cool thing is those guys are big in my mind for my generation, but they got to play with John fucking Paul Jones. They got to play with John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin. Played bass and organ, mandolin, all these other instruments. You know, everybody knows who Led Zeppelin is. These are a couple of my favorite Zeppelin albums too, and Physical Graffiti, the double album. But I think that's so cool that, you know, somebody of a latter generation that inspired them, they kind of got to do that. I think the way they set that up was Dave and Josh were out at a restaurant, and it was one of those like medieval things where they have like the horses come out and everybody's dressed all medieval, and they were just kind of chilling. And I think either Dave or John, I think it was Dave that invited John Paul Jones to be there, and they were like, he was just kind of like, oh, okay. And then they kind of, you know, asked, do you want to play together? I don't remember the exact story, but it was really cool. It was a really cool story. But yeah, I was watching them the other day, and that's what made me think I really need to talk about them Crooked Vultures, because they're one of my favorite super groups. And of course, everybody in the band is from other favorite groups of mine. So it's pretty cool. Another member, he's not an official member, like he's not on the album. I don't think he worked on the album at all. However, he did a lot of the touring and the secondary, like guitars, rhythm guitar, and stuff like that. And so I picked up some of the organ stuff that was intermingled, so John Paul Jones didn't have to lay down the bass, or there wasn't any gaps in the music. Alan Johannes, or Elaine Johannes, however you say it, Alan Johannes. I think I remember Josh introduced him as Alan. Cool story about him though is he actually went to school, and this is kind of where this gets tied into the Chili Peppers, with I believe Anthony Flea and Hillel Slovak. And I believe they all had a band before the Chili Peppers were a band, and he was the singer. So in my mind, I like to kind of think of him as the original lead singer of the Chili Peppers before they were the Chili Peppers, because Anthony wasn't part of that makeup at that time. Really cool. Not only that, but he was also in Queens a little bit with his wife, who is now has now passed. On I think the Lullabies era, she played keyboards and sang backup vocals and stuff, and did other percussive stuff. But not only that, he was really close friends with Chris Cornell, as you know, the late Chris Cornell, another grunge icon, and wrote a lot of songs on his solo albums. So it's really kind of an amalgam of not just a supergroup, but like a lot of people that like to write and play and jam and all kind of do things in the same circles. So back to them Crooked Vultures, like the band, it's just a really cool idea, because I mean, when Dave played with Queens, he just kind of sat in, and they were in need of a drummer, and so he was the dude that came in the studio and filled the position. Not that there was anything lacking, but it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna do this, like I'm gonna be in your band. So I don't think he was as prepared to go in and be that current new drummer as he was with them Crooked Vultures. This was a thing that got off the floor per them saying, let's actually form a group. And when they did so, Dave has his setup, and it's a badass setup. I don't know all the details, but I know he uses a lot of big drums, really big drums. I think he uses 16 and 18 floor toms. Of course, his top tom, I think he said he wanted to use a 14, but he ended up with a 13 just because he needed that higher pitch. And yeah, like really big cymbals, big EFX cymbal at the top with, the ones with the holes in it. And then what else he used? Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. Back in high school, I remember when I got my first drum kit and my first set of cymbals. They weren't the greatest. They used the starter Zildjian ZBTs, the B8 alloy instead of the B20. They're not as hard. You can dent them easily, you can crack them easy, but they're good for new players who are just learning. However, I wanted to kind of step up my game, and I remember buying an actual ride cymbal instead of like some 18-inch, orchestral cymbal, or 18-inch junky ZBT. I went with a ZHT, bought a 20. I think it was a 20. It may have been a 22. I really do believe it was a 20-inch ZHT, which is also kind of a starter cymbal, but for me, being like 14, 15, 16 years old, it was like a big deal in my mind. So that was my first real ride cymbal. Well, fast forward a few years, Dave Grohl's playing drums again in another band called Them Crooked Vultures, and the cymbal, the ride cymbal that he decides to use is a 22-inch ZHT. Now, for somebody like Dave Grohl, his status, he could get whatever he wants. He can get an Artisan, he can get, these really nice hand-hammered cymbals instead of having to settle. But he went with that. He went with that for a reason, I believe. I don't know the real reason, but I think the reason is because he wanted to sound a little bit trashy, a little bit dirty, go simple. And I don't think he uses the ride a whole lot on the album and the music that they play. However, it's just really cool that it's there. And of course, John Paul Jones, not just being the bass guru that he is, or the musical guru he is, he also plays a lot of organs and piano stuff, keys stuff, and small guitars, mandolin, and stuff like that. So it's just a really cool thing to see him in the band, because he adds a lot of flavor to that. And then, of course, adding Alan Johannes into the band is another cool thing, because he and Josh feed off of each other. They kind of know how to play. They've played live together a lot, and he knows what he wants, and he can understand that music, because it's in that same flavor of music. It's dark, it's heavy. The themes are really not much different than Queens of the Stone Age as far as Josh's writing. And just the booklet, I mean, it's so cool with the vulture dude's head, and it's kind of got these British themes, and that's the cool thing too, is with John and the band, it's kind of got that little bit of UK music vibe, UK rock music vibe that Mott the Hoople and Zeppelin and stuff like that, and the Stones had that just little twist. I think I remember an interview, John Paul Jones talking about, it's interesting to play with someone like Josh Homme, because he is not your typical punk guy. However, he always says his main influences were punk stars, punk rock bands and stuff like that, because he was in Caius before he was in Queens of the Stone Age, and that was a grunge band that was really deeply rooted in desert rock, which took a lot of different types of music and put it together, but typically it was a grunge band of the era. But I think John Paul Jones said something about Josh playing like this bastard blues, is what he called it, because it's blues, but the way he tunes his guitar and the way he bends notes and does his solos, I mean, it really is kind of funny that they call him the Ginger Elvis, because he looks like Elvis. He has that hairdo, the slick back hairdo, something about his brow, I don't know, but it's cool that he has that dynamic because of the music he plays. It's got that greaser kind of feel to it. But yeah, this has got a lot of really cool songs, so if you've ever been curious about it and never checked it out, if you're a rock fan, if you're fans of these dudes, go check it out. I mean, seriously. One of my favorite songs, Dead End Friends, I think that's the one that got a lot of radio play back in the day, and then No One Loves Me, and Neither Do I. But like Mind Eraser, No Chaser, that one's super cool. Dave does a lot of background vocals on that one. And Elephants, I think it's got some political subtleness to it. It's pretty cool. And then of course, like I said, Bastard Blues, Scumbag Blues is the name of their number 6 track on this album, so it's kind of a dead giveaway. Bandoliers is another, it's like an epic song. Reptiles, really cool, kind of run with the pack kind of song. Interlude with Ludes, of course, you can't have a song, you can't have an album with Josh Homme on it and not talk about drugs. Rated R, Feel Good Hit of the Summer, that's the whole theme. There's just really a lot of cool songs on here. Caligula, it's a badass song. Gunman, and then Spinning in the Daffodils, as long and drawn out as it is, and as kind of laid back as it is, it's still punchy and killer. They leave you no room for I don't know if I like this track. It's really good all the way through. It's 13 tracks. Go check it out, I suggest. And if you're like me, when you hear it and you really like it, go on social media and blow up their page. Because I know here recently they've talked about how, they've wanted to come out with another album. But I don't know, just, with coronavirus in the last year, COVID-19 has kind of stopped touring. And the way albums are put out and released and sold and all that stuff, it's kind of hard for them to just be like, I'm going to throw money at this. So that may be the real reason. But John Paul Jones is bluntly an old guy now. We only have so much time left on this earth for him. And Dave and Josh aren't getting any younger. So it would be really nice to hear some new albums from them, at least one more, before it's all done and through. Go check it out. Go to their social media when you find out how great it is, because I know you will. You'll listen to it and you'll like it just like I do. And be like, dude, you guys need to get on the ball, man, because they do. They really need to put some more stuff out. I know Foo Fighters just put out a new album. Queens is talking about some new stuff. As we know, since Bonham died, Zeppelin hasn't really done much. I'm not sure what exactly John Paul Jones does on his time, but either way, even if they're not together as them Crooked Vultures, it would be kind of cool to hear some more stuff from all three of those people. And Alan too. I think he put out a solo album not too long ago, and he's always working. I see him on social media, on his Instagram. I follow him, and he's always working on stuff. So anyway, I'm rambling. We're in 15 minutes here. Just go check out the album. It's really cool. I am Hugh Hefner here, signing off for Rock and Robe. Have a good one. Go like and follow.